Hello everyone, I am Dr. John Morris, and I wanted to invite you to experiencing the New Testament. You may have thought that you were taking a class called Introduction to the New Testament, but I really like to think about it as experiencing the New Testament because so many of you have grown up with the Bible that being an introduction to the New Testament can be a misnomer because you've been introduced to the New Testament for your entire life. But even if you have spent years in church, or if you haven't spent any time experiencing or learning the Bible, this is an opportunity to approach the Bible in the New Testament in particular in an entirely different way and really experience it. And during the course of the class, I hope that we will experience the New Testament spiritually. I hope we'll experience the New Testament geographically. And I hope we'll experience the New Testament culturally. And I think those might be all three different ways to experience the New Testament that you may or may not have done before. When I say spiritually, I'm really talking about approaching the New Testament as if it were a spiritual pilgrimage. And a spiritual pilgrimage is a trip somewhere you may have been before, but this time when you visit that place, you don't see it with your physical eyes so much as you see it with your spiritual eyes. So I'm going to ask you as you read through the text in the New Testament to really open yourself up to the prompting of the Holy Spirit, to treat this class as an opportunity for a life-changing event. I'm convinced that God has called us all together in this online class for us to experience Him in a new way. And I'm convinced that He will speak to us during the class at some point and ask us to change in some way. Now, we're all going to get a grade. I'll get evaluated. You'll get a grade from me as your professor. But I also think if God has called us to this class, God has something He wants us to accomplish, something He wants us to be changed by the Holy Spirit. And if we don't do that, we're in danger of getting a failing grade from God. Now, don't misunderstand me. If we're Christians, we're saved. But I think God has ways that He wants us to grow, and this class is an opportunity to do that. So as you read through with not only your physical eyes, but your spiritual eyes, and be aware of the prompting of the Holy Spirit. It may call you to a familiar passage, may call you to something in the Bible that you'd never thought of before, but I am convinced that God will call us all to something in this class. Secondly, we want to experience the New Testament geographically. Sometimes I think we forget that the New Testament really did happen in the physical world. And I'll give you an example. We'll show some pictures later on as we go through the class. We've all heard of the Sea of Galilee, but we might not have experienced it if we haven't had a trip to Israel or something like that. And it is very small, and it's surrounded by mountains. So sitting on the Sea of Galilee, you can look one way and see Capernaum. You can look the other way and see Tiberias, and you're surrounded by hills. And all of a sudden you understand why Jesus traveled across the Sea of Galilee or on the Sea of Galilee so much, and that it could be a very long trip from Tiberias to Capernaum because you're going up and down these hills, and it's very tiring. On the other hand, you can get in a boat and you can go from one end of the Sea of Galilee to the other very quickly. So just that little piece of physicality starts making a lot more sense about what Jesus says. And we'll talk a lot more about that as we go through the class, because I think it gives us the physical background of the New Testament. In fact, sometimes the land of Israel is called the fourth gospel. The geography is that important. Final way I want us to approach the New Testament is culturally. One of our challenges with understanding the New Testament is that we are removed from it by 2,000 years, and the culture of the New Testament is not necessarily our culture. So the more we learn about the culture and what was prevalent then, the easier it is that we can understand the New Testament, and the more insight we get into the New Testament. And I'll give you just a quick example. I don't know how many times you've read the introduction to the Gospel of Mark, first chapter of Mark, but did you ever notice that it really starts with three references? There is a reference about Jesus from an Old Testament prophet, from a New Testament prophet, John the Baptist, and finally from God. And what's going on here, I think, on one level, is Mark is trying to establish the honor and status of Jesus. And in the first century, honor and status was very important. So he establishes Jesus' honor and status by calling on what people would consider authoritative sources: an Old Testament prophet, a New Testament prophet, and finally God Himself. And if you think about it, if you're looking for a reference for a job or something like that, that's pretty good territory to be in. But if we understand the cultural background, we understand why Mark might have started his gospel that way. In the same way, Matthew and Luke start with genealogies, because genealogies were also very important to people in order to establish someone's honor or status in society. So join me as we go through the New Testament, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the forums. Thanks, guys.